She loved him. She raised a family with him. She shared decades of joy, heartbreak, and Hollywood pressure with him. But she still said no to the one thing everyone thought would come naturally: marriage. After 40 years together, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell remain one of Hollywood's most enduring couples. No cheating scandals, no explosive breakups, just love. Steady, lasting, and unshaken. So why didn't they ever get married? For decades, Goldie laughed off the question. Why ruin a good thing, she'd say. But behind the jokes, there was something else. Something she never fully explained until now. And what she finally admitted, it wasn't about Kurt. It was about her. In the next few minutes, you'll uncover the emotional truth Goldie Hawn kept hidden for years, and the one moment that made her say, "I couldn't do it." In a town built on scripted romances, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell were the real thing. No forced fairy tale, no red carpet gimmicks, just a love story that quietly outlived the headlines. They met in 1966 on the set of the one and only genuine original Family Band. But at the time, Goldie was 21, full of fire and ambition, and Kurt was just 16. Too young, too early. Life moved on. So did they. It wasn't until nearly 2 decades later, in 1983, that fate finally stepped back in. Cast together in Swing Shift, Goldie and Kurt reunited, older, wiser, both having lived lives full of Hollywood chaos, failed marriages, and growing pains. But something had shifted. This time, it clicked. Goldie, already a household name, had 2 children, Oliver and Kate Hudson, from her previous marriage to musician Bill Hudson. Kurt, recently divorced from actress Susan Hubley, had a son, Boston. Blending a family is never easy, but Goldie and Kurt did it with almost no public friction. No custody feuds, no scandal. In fact, it was Kurt Russell, not Oliver and Kate's biological father, who walked Kate Hudson down the red carpet. In countless interviews, both children referred to him as Dad. They weren't married, but in every way that mattered, they were a family. And as the years passed, the world took notice. Hollywood couples came and went. Marriages fell apart in the spotlight. But Goldie and Kurt stayed the course. Birthday parties, vacations, grandkids, projects together. Private moments that slipped under the radar in a world obsessed with noise. And still, no ring. For decades, the media asked. Late-night hosts poked. Magazine covers speculated. Why won't Goldie Hawn marry Kurt Russell? She smiled. She deflected. She laughed. Why mess with something that works? She'd say with a twinkle in her eye. It became a kind of running joke in Hollywood. They were that couple, the ones who didn't need a piece of paper. The ones who made love look effortless without the ceremony. The exception to the rule. But underneath the humor was a question that never quite went away. Because deep down, fans weren't just curious. They were confused. If this wasn't about fear or dysfunction, then what was it really about? Why, after all these years, did Goldie still say no? By the time the 2000s rolled around, Goldie and Kurt had already outlasted dozens of Hollywood marriages. Their chemistry hadn't faded. Their family was thriving. And the will they or won't they speculation reached a quiet fever pitch. Even their kids wanted it. In interviews, Kate Hudson once shared, "It would be amazing if my mom and Kurt got married. But I also get it. They've created something that works. And they're still together, longer than most marriages I know." The public agreed. Everywhere they went, awards shows, family outings, Walk of Fame ceremonies, people asked the same thing: why not make it official? But Goldie's answer was always slippery. Marriage is fine for some people, but we're happy. We wake up every day and choose each other. Isn't that what matters? Sounded wise, empowered, even rebellious, especially to a generation of women who watched her grow from free-spirited comedienne to Oscar-winning powerhouse. Still, over time, Goldie began offering clues, little cracks in the playful deflections. In one interview, she said, "I've been married before, and I know how easy it is to fall into roles, to forget who you were before the ceremony." And in another, more candid moment, "I love Kurt with all my heart, but I never wanted to lose myself again." It wasn't about not loving him. It was about not losing her. Goldie Hawn was married twice before Kurt. Her first marriage, to actor Gus Triconis, ended quietly. Her second, to Bill Hudson, ended with public tension, estranged children, and years of emotional fallout. She knew what it meant to sign the papers and feel the weight of what followed. But there was something else, something she hadn't said for years, something that sat beneath the layers of jokes and media-friendly quips. A reason deeper than just fear, deeper than feminist ideals or 1970s independence. A moment. There was a time early in her relationship with Kurt where she almost said yes, where marriage was on the table, where things were fragile and real and terrifying. It was a private chapter, tucked behind closed doors and closed hearts. And what happened next would shape her decision forever. Most people don't know there was a time when Goldie Hawn almost became Mrs. Kurt Russell. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't for publicity. It was real. And it happened during a moment that caught them both off guard, at a time when their relationship was being tested, not by scandal or infidelity, but by life. They'd been together for years already. The children were growing. The media had calmed down. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But privately, Goldie was struggling. She was navigating a career slowdown, fighting the pressure to stay relevant in a youth-obsessed industry. Kurt was working constantly, and though their love hadn't dimmed, the space between them was growing. To make matters more complex, one of their children was having a difficult time, a period of rebellion, uncertainty, and emotional turmoil. Goldie, the mother, felt stretched thin. Goldie, the woman, felt like she was losing herself. In that storm of uncertainty, the idea of marriage came up again. Not as a media stunt, not as a fan pleaser, but as an anchor. Kurt, ever steady, had offered to make things official, to give her security, to give the family something solid, something final. And for a moment, she considered it. She looked at their life, their children, their love, all they had built without ever needing the paperwork. But even in that moment, especially in that moment, something inside her froze. She later said, "There was this voice in me that said, if you do this, you might lose what makes it work." And so she didn't. She didn't walk down the aisle. She didn't change her last name. She didn't give in to the idea that real love needed a ring. Instead, she took a step back. They took time apart, not a breakup, but space. Not because they didn't love each other, but because Goldie needed to listen to the part of her that was asking, "Who are you outside of this?" What followed wasn't easy. There were hurt feelings, awkward silences, but Kurt understood. He always had. And when they came back together, it wasn't with ultimatums. It wasn't with legal contracts. It was with a deeper respect and a silent agreement. They were in this together, just differently than the world expected. In later years, Goldie began to share more. Her interviews became less rehearsed. Her words carried more weight. She began speaking honestly about why she'd chosen not to marry Kurt Russell, why she'd stayed outside the system, even when everything pointed to walking down the aisle. And it always came back to one truth. She had lost herself before, and she wasn't willing to do it again. Goldie's second marriage, to Bill Hudson, had left emotional scars. The relationship had been full of turmoil, infidelity, instability, public feuding, and eventually, estrangement from their children. The experience taught her something. Marriage doesn't protect love, can sometimes trap it. She once said in a 2020 interview, "I didn't want to wake up one day and realize I was someone's wife, but no longer myself." For Goldie, the idea of marriage became synonymous with surrender. Surrendering her independence, her instincts, her ability to walk away if she ever had to. And the irony? She never wanted to walk away from Kurt. She loved him deeply, and maybe that's why she didn't marry him. Because if she did, and things broke, the pain would be tied not just to love lost, but to identity lost. "I wanted to choose him every day," she said, "not feel like I had to." There's something incredibly powerful in that, especially for women of her generation who were taught that marriage was the ultimate goal. Goldie had already lived that story, and it nearly broke her. So when people asked why not Kurt, her answer was never about him. It was about survival. I couldn't do it, she admitted. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. She didn't want the expectations, the assumptions, the shift that often happens when legal status overrides emotional choice. She wanted love without structure, commitment without confinement, partnership without paperwork. And Kurt, he understood. He never pushed, never pressured, never made her feel like she was failing to give him something he deserved. Instead, he stayed, through the tabloids, through the questions, through the moments when she questioned herself. Because in the end, he didn't need a wedding. He just needed her. And Goldie? She needed to be free in order to stay. In the end, it was never about the wedding. There was no dress, no aisle, no bouquet, no Mr. and Mrs. announcement in People magazine. But what Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell built, it lasted longer than most marriages in Hollywood or anywhere else. 40 years. For decades. That's longer than many of their fans have even been alive. They raised kids. They became grandparents. They supported each other through career highs and lows, through public pressure, private grief, and the constant noise of an industry obsessed with image. And they did it without ever saying, I do. For Goldie, that was the point. We're not married, but we're committed, she said. And that matters more to me than any piece of paper. That kind of love isn't flashy. It's not performative. It's not posted on Instagram with matching robes and honeymoon hashtags. It's the kind of love that wakes up every morning and says, I choose you, not because the law says so, but because the heart still does. And maybe that's why their story resonates so deeply, especially for women who spent their lives being told that love had to follow a specific path, that it wasn't real unless there was a ring, that it wasn't lasting unless there was a license, that your worth was tied to being someone's wife. Goldie rejected all of that, not because she didn't believe in love, but because she believed in herself, and in the quiet kind of love that doesn't need an audience. She didn't need the wedding. She had the life. And even now, in her late 70s, she speaks about Kurt Russell not as a husband, but as something even more sacred. He's my partner, my lover, my best friend, and he's still the one. No one's counting the years anymore. No one's asking when the wedding is. They stopped asking when they realized this was the marriage, just not the one written on paper. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful kind of love there is. The kind that stays, quietly, without needing permission, without needing a vow, just choosing, over and over again. She couldn't do it. She didn't get married. But in choosing not to, Goldie Hawn redefined what it means to love someone for life. And after 40 years, she's still with him. For more of the latest news, check out this video.